morning. The mission statement of Open Circle is, we provide a place to gather for promoting harmony in mind, body, and spirit. We do not necessarily agree with, endorse, or promote the ideas and philosophies presented by our guest speakers. We encourage all of you to form your own opinions guided by your innate higher self. We are dedicated to creating a safe, supportive place to heal, to grow, and to realize our true essence.
Today, the meditation is led by Janet. And I learned Janet as Janet from another planet. Venus.
Another planet appropriate for today's talk. While I speak a bit here, if you would just practice taking your deep breaths all the way down through your belly. We tend to breathe just half breaths during our day. And I want us, our minds are so active, we're always in the presence of greatness here and intellect. But if we can, just for the next 60 seconds, release our mind. Release the monkey mind, relax it. So if you can close your eyes, and while you're taking your deep breaths, just letting go of the mind muscle, and help replace all the thoughts with perhaps a visualization of a candle, and holding that candle right in your heart, and seeing it glow, feeling the warmth. And if your mind wanders off of the warmth of that candle and the peace that it represents, just gently bring it back and see that candle. Feel its warmth. See and feel its peace. Breathing in, I know I'm breathing in. Breathing out, I know I'm breathing out. And thank you for trying to empty your mind for just even a minute.
Good, I hope I forgot my phone, but I didn't. So I'm going to give me a second, and I'm going to turn it off. There's a couple of announcements. One is that a men's group is forming in Ajijic. This is men supporting men and diving into what's not working in their lives and discovering solutions. The first group is going to be on this Tuesday from 5 to 7 p.m. And you can be in touch with Bob Wiest for more information. Stand up, Bob. And also an announcement about a fundraiser for the Have Hammers Trade Circle, which is a program of educating young people in woodworking, giving them woodworking skills. And if you see Wayne for tickets, and excuse me, this is my first time as moderator here, and I guess it's pretty standard to tell a couple of jokes, and
Remember the baskets to pass.
oh yes, and while I'm telling a few hopefully humorous things, the baskets will go around in support of the people that make the sandwiches, watch the cars, set up the chairs. Please be generous. And my joke, very appropriately this week, I have been in touch with one of my old mentors. I haven't seen him since the day of the funeral of my dad in 1986, but this was a gentleman who was my neighbor, and now we're always in touch by email, and he sends me, he's a mentor of mine, and I'm really anxious to see him again, and he taught me a new word this week. I don't know, does anybody know what means paraprosdokian? No? Good. Then I get to share this with you. Paraprosdokian humor is a figure of speech in which the latter part of a sentence or phrase is unexpected and always causes the listener or reader to reinterpret the first part. And it's pretty much a standard tool used by comedians. For example, if I agreed with you, we'd both be wrong. The early bird might get the worm, but the second mouse always gets the cheese. And the early bird get the worm has always raised the question to me, what happens to the early worm? I guess he gets a ticket to the next world. Reincarnation. War does not determine who is right, always who is left. You do not need a parachute to skydive. You only need a parachute to skydive the second time. Nostalgia isn't what it used to be. Money can't buy happiness, but it sure makes misery easier to live with. And this one is from Winston Churchill. You can't always count on Americans to do the right thing. Oh no, I'm sorry. You can always count on Americans to do the right thing after they've tried everything else. And from Groucho Marx, I've had a perfectly wonderful evening, but this wasn't it. And then the email, actually, I did research on the paraprosdokian because I'd never heard of it, and there really aren't that many around available on the internet. But the email came to me as the perfect paraprosdokian paragraph, and I'll share it with you. I got off the phone with a friend of mine in Minnesota. He said that since early this morning, the snow had been nearly waist high and still falling. The temperature is falling below zero, and the northwest wind is increasing. His wife has done nothing but look through the kitchen window all day. He says that if it gets much worse, he will have to let her in. I lived in Minnesota, so you know, I can definitely relate to this. And today I'm going to introduce our presenter and speaker. Many of you know her. She's a longtime resident.
Moment. We need to introduce the new people.
Anybody who is here for the first time at the Open Circle, will please stand up and introduce yourself, say your name and where you are from.
And hold on just a minute till I get there with the mic.
Well, I guess it's colder up there in Canada. I'm pretty excited about this talk, obviously, and wanting to hear what Barbara Schermer has to offer us. Maybe she'll have some predictions about the next year. The subject of her talk is Cosmic Trends, Tuning into Natural Rhythms, 2011-2012. Life consists of cycles and patterns that are hidden but knowable. Gain fresh perspective on the upcoming planetary cycles of 2011, 2012 that affect us all collectively and individually. Ajijic resident Barbara Schermer is an internationally known astrologer and author who shows how the principles of in-depth astrology may be immensely useful in understanding our lives. She has a vigorous astrological practice with both individual and corporate clients with two very different specialties. As a business coach and a timing expert for entrepreneurs and management, as well as a fertility consultant for women who want to become pregnant. She's articulate, fun, and offers her perspective, often stunning insights into an affirming, down-to-earth style. Barbara, bienvenidos.
It's yours. Welcome. I did this talk at Open Circle 1 year ago. It was a different topic. It was on healing signs. And this was just maybe 2 months after we arrived here. And I'm delighted to say 1 year later, I know some of you guys. So that's great. All right. Very first thing I always like to do is to orient you to the 4 directions. This is the east and the west, the north, and the south. And what I have, and I always like to start with, is the chart for right now. And I'm going to pass, I've got 4 extra copies, I'll pass this one too. But this is what the planets look like right now with, we imagine putting ourselves in the middle. So on the eastern horizon right now, if we could look, we could see the constellation of Pisces rising, and the moon and Uranus and Jupiter are right below the eastern horizon right now. So through the day, we will see those planets move overhead, because remember, we are moving on our axis toward the east. Here at Ajijic at about 900 miles an hour. So it looks like everything's moving above us, which it is, but in fact, it's us rotating on our axis. So right now, the planet Neptune has just risen. The sun, as we can see, and the planet Mars is sitting right next to the sun, but obviously we cannot see it. Pluto, Mercury, Venus is sitting almost straight over our head. The planet Saturn, and that's it. Okay, so tonight, if you go out on your Mirador right after sunset, you will see the little, almost a crescent moon, and you'll see Jupiter right next door. Jupiter is the only planet that's visible in the night sky right now. So in astrological terminology, it's a moon-Jupiter conjunction, so you'll be able to see both of them beautiful in the western horizon. I would invite you. The other thing that you now know is the planet Uranus is also sitting right there. We can't see Uranus because it's too far out in the solar system, but it's there nonetheless. So tonight when you look out, you'll see the crescent moon and Jupiter, and know that the planet Uranus is sitting very close. Now I'm going to give you my copy too. Susan's going to pass these out, every 4 or 5 rows or so. So each of you can look at this. Everything that's on that wheel is a planet. And if a child were born right now in Ajijic, this would be that child's birth chart. Most of us know what our sun signs are because we see it in newspaper horoscopes, which are, I have real mixed feelings about them because on the one hand, they let people know there is such a thing as astrology. On the other hand, they tend to be pretty silly. And so those of us who are more scientific or empirically oriented tend to write astrology off as superficial nonsense. It is not, by any means. To me, people ask me, do you believe in astrology? And it's a frame of reference that doesn't compute to me. I think the most accurate metaphor for astrology is it is a language. It is a language of the psyche. Carl Jung called it the map of the psyche. So if we think of it as a language, when someone says to me, do you believe in astrology? It sounds like, do I believe in Spanish? All right? So think of it as a language because it's really the most accurate. The image that kind of captures this, and I'll send this around too. Some of you that are in the back, I have pictures up here of the different signs that are lovely. You might want to visit it afterward. And we had a problem with the board because we couldn't find a temporary marker. So I ended up writing on the back of the board, permanent. Okay. So if there's any other astrologers that need this year, you got it. So it's a little hard to see. It's a little hard to see, but I'll show it to you. So, okay. So think of astrology as a language. And I'm going to also pass this image around. It's the back of a fine Swiss watch. And if you've ever opened up the back of a watch like that, you'll see the wheels with the gears. You'll see big wheels, medium size, smaller wheels, and then you see that little teeny one going, right? Let's equate that with the planets in the solar system. The big wheels are the planets that are most farther out, Pluto, Neptune, Uranus. The middle-sized wheels are Saturn and Jupiter. The smaller wheels are the Sun, Mars, Mercury, and Venus. And that little teeny wheel that's always going, we can equate to the moon. So literally what astrology is when you are born, we imagine it's like a stop-action photograph of where the planets were at the exact moment you were born. Now, they didn't stop moving. They're continuing to move. And as they move in the sky, they will trigger off these various size wheels. Sometimes one of the big wheels gets triggered, and then it has an effect with some of the other wheels, which means it has an effect in your life. A particular kind of experience comes into your life, or a possible event comes into your life. The other way it can happen is in reverse. That little moon guy, and then those little smaller ones, they can shift, and then they can shift all the way up in influence. So we have this very dynamic kind of ongoing process that describes the kinds of experiences that you are likely to have at any one period of time. Now, here in Ajijic, we have an amazing opportunity. When we live in cities, we rarely look up. We rarely look at the night sky. And when we do, we renew our intimacy with the cosmos. Every single person here today is alive because someone in your lineage was knowledgeable enough to know the moon cycles and how the sun moved through the seasons. There were definitely times to plant root crops, for instance, waning moon. So you had to have somebody in your tribe know when to most successfully plant to get the best crops to hopefully help your tribe survive through the winter time. Ecclesiastes, to everything there is a season and a time to every purpose under heaven, a time to plant and a time to sow that which is planted. It's completely true. So somebody in your past knew about the stars, the planets, and the timings of when to do things. Let's pretend that we are all in a tribe about 5,000 years ago. All right? Who here are fire signs? Aries, Leo, Sag. Okay.
Can I just ask you something?
Yes.
Can we be all four signs?
Well, we're talking about your sun sign, but everybody's chart, as is going around, you have a moon sign, Venus sign, Mercury sign. You have 10 planets, and each of those planets can appear in different signs. So I'm talking generally because we're talking to a general group here. For instance, fire signs, all right? If it doesn't fit you, if the description doesn't fit you, there's something in your personal horoscope that is ameliorating that, okay? Answer your question? Okay. Okay, so you fire signs. We're in a tribe, pre-electricity. We're out, on a plain someplace. You tend to be the warriors. You're fire. You tend to be the ones that are outgoing. If other tribes come around, you would tend to be the ones to have the courage to go out and find out, okay, are they friend or foe? You also may be the ones that tend to want to keep us on the move, exploring, where you earth signs, Virgo, Taurus, Capricorns, and you water signs, Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces, you don't want to move. You want to set up home. You want to have a base and a foundation. So, earth signs, who's that here? That's Taurus, Virgo, and Cap. Okay, you are the ones that are most interested in the planting cycle and knowing when to successfully do so. You, I would call the manifestors. So fire signs are warriors, earth signs are manifestors. You're the ones that kept us fed. You knew how much food stores we had and how we had to kind of plan out the winter in order to survive. Okay, who here are air signs? Gemini, Libra, Aquarius. Oh, we got quite a few, myself included. We are the communicators, the teachers, and the diplomats, especially if you are a Libra. So our role would be to educate the children, to send messages to neighborhood tribes, and Libras especially would probably be the diplomat of our group. You Libras would be the ones to go out and maybe negotiate with these tribes about hunting areas or, what's ours or what's yours. And then we have the water signs, and this is the Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces, so who are you? Oh, a lot of you too. Okay. You would be the healers of our group, in part because you're good listeners, you're good natural therapists. My husband sitting over here is a sun in Cancer, moon in Pisces. He was a therapist for 40 years in Chicago, and a fabulous one. Very fitting. The shamans would likely be the Scorpios in the group. And the Cancers are the ones that would likely take care of the children, be really attentive to the children's needs, and create home for all of us. They're the cooks. Now, one of the ways that astrology has kind of tracked through in recent history is through the Farmer's Almanac. Everyone's familiar with that, right? The Farmer's Almanac was first recorded in 1457 in Germany. And its most popular version was written by Ben Franklin. It was called the Poor Richard's Almanac, and he produced that from 1732 to 1758 under the pseudonym of Richard Saunders. Ben Franklin was an astrologer. He kept it hidden. My grandfather had an organic garden, and one of my earliest memories is seeing his tattered Farmer's Almanac up on a hook in his garden shed. And I'm sure a lot of you have memories like that. Right now, my interest here is planting trees with Yolanda. Wait, there you go. We are planting 1,000 moringa trees out at Jaime's property out by the shrimp restaurants. Because it's a it's a sustainable crop that if it's successful here can go to the poor communities and provide a constant, steady income. So when we moved here, which is more than a year ago, I had no clue that we were getting into a house that has a mirador that has a perfect east, south, and west view. So I discover, as an astrologer, sky lover, I have a perfect observatory. I've got my telescope, my binoculars up there. And here in Ajijic, if you have a mirador that sees the night sky, you have such a wonderful advantage because Lake Chapala is a perfect, bold observatory. So every year I do this talk, this is probably for 25 years now, I think of, okay, what are the main themes of the upcoming year that I can just bullet point you? And the best analogy to the times we are in right now are aspects or planetary influences that existed about 500 years ago. Actually, starting as what's called a Uranus-Neptune conjunction in 1993. The best example of that is 500 years ago in Florence, Italy. This was the height of the Italian Renaissance. Was an extraordinarily creative time. We had Michelangelo, Botticelli, Leonardo, Titian, Copernicus a little bit later, Galileo. And the birth of genius is there, and a whole new paradigm shift of how we looked at life. Within 120 years, we went from fearing that if we got to the edge of the earth, we would fall off. Hey, this is Columbus. To the Copernican revolution, from earth-centered to sun-centered in the 1530s, and then to the refinement of the telescope of Galileo in 1610, that proved that. So in 120 years, we went from believing we'd fall off the earth to knowing the sun was the center of our solar system. There's something similar going on right now. Just a decade ago, it was discovered that the universe is actually speeding up. We're actually being flung out from each other, the galaxies. It was not believed to be common sense at that point. We also believed that there were no planets outside of our solar system, and I'll get to this in a minute because, if anything, that is untrue. And now the basic model of how the universe is formed, the Big Bang Theory, is seriously being questioned with new evidence. Now, new births are always accompanied with a lot of pain and trauma. In the Renaissance, King Charles from France was ready to invade. The Turks were invading from the south. The city-states were fighting. Plague was killing a third of the population of Europe. And if we look now, at the moment, there are 36 active wars on the planet. Plagues are SARS, malaria coming back with tremendous strength, AIDS, and so forth. And inquisitions existed at that time. The recent news about the Iranian woman who was condemned to stoning for adultery. It's been big news. I mean, in this day and age, that someone can actually be stoned to death because of adultery. How many of you are mothers? Lots. You know that the birth of your child was accompanied by pain. It is exactly what's happening right now. There's some miraculous things that are occurring, paradigm shifts that are occurring, but it's under tremendous pressure. And I've never been a mom myself, but you know the old joke about what birth feels like, childbirth feels like, is take your lip and pull it out. Now stretch it over your head. It's kind of like that right now. So let me get to the crux of what I think is the next 2-year time period. Written 2010 to 12, and I'll show this to you for those of you that are even 4 rows back. It's hard to see this. The summation of this year, I'm going to pass this around too, because this captures my conversation completely. And the last person, whoever gets it, will you please make sure I get it back, because I use this for teaching. Okay, so what is going around, the front part, there you go, that part. What is going around is succinctly what we are experiencing. Okay, and the way that I have defined this year is great peril, great promise. We hear a lot about the peril part. We read it every day in the paper. We hear less about the promise of this time period, and I want to end with that particularly. Okay, now these planetary influences that are going on right now are being exacerbated by the fact that we have 6 eclipses in 2011, remarkably so. We have 4 solar eclipses. We just had a solar eclipse on January 4th. And we have 2 lunar eclipses this year. And much of this eclipse activity, we think of like triple full moons. They're very intense time periods. And this year, June and July, there's a whole series. There's a solar and a lunar and then another solar eclipse within 1 month of each other. So that tends to be a very intensified time period. Okay, now, who saw the lunar eclipse here on December 21st? Oh, great. Were we blessed or what to see this? The moon rose over the east. The moon was so bright, you had to have sunglasses on. I could not look at it to see when the eclipse would start. And about halfway through the moon eclipse, you could look at it with the naked eye. And then when it was fully eclipsed, it was sitting about 4 degrees off, straight up vertical. Right over here, right about here, was the actual eclipse. And it was peach and copper. And I asked my astronomy friend, I didn't know why it was peach and copper. It's peach and copper because it is reflecting every sunrise and sunset on the earth at that moment. That's why it's peach and copper. All right, now let me get to this. I'm not hooked up. Okay, this is a cross. And the emphasis that I'm looking at here looks like a T. It looks like a T like this. And these are outer planets, so these are big guys. They move very slowly. The planet Pluto I've got as straight overhead. The planets Uranus and Jupiter are over here. And the planet Saturn is over on this side. So literally, if we could take them down and put them on a piece of paper, they would look like this. It's called a T-square. All right? I'm going to talk about this because this is the real difficult and challenging dynamics that we're experiencing right now. This started in the spring and especially the fall of 2008. Some of you may remember that that's when financial markets went pretty nuts and our 401ks became 201ks. I would say that most of us would say we lost about half of our net worth. Okay, so Pluto is in an Earth sign, Capricorn, and represents, it goes through November of 2024, by the way, so it's quite a long time. We still have Pluto in the sign of Capricorn. This rules the physical environment and likely increase the incidence of natural disasters, earthquakes, volcanoes, the Gulf oil explosion. What seemed to be solid structures turned out not to be. There was a great example of a family in California. This was when the World Cup was going on. They were quietly watching the World Cup and their house fell into a sinkhole and all of them were killed. Some of you may remember that story. What seemed to be solid foundation, and there was another one that just happened with the rains in California. There was a picture of a whole apartment house that was just on the edge of falling into one of those holes. So what we think of as solid is not so much. I was looking in the book Geo Mexico last night and found out, oh my God, we're really around some volcanic areas here. We're on rock, which is a good thing. The financial markets that we trusted, bankers that we trusted, not so sure anymore. The tearing down of power structures and ideologies, the old boy network, that way of doing business is no longer working. So corporations that are still operating on profit at all costs, ship out the jobs, have no concern, show no concern for your local community, they're going to be in trouble because our consciousness is changing about how corporations owe it to their local community to give back, and if they don't, they're really starting to alienate us with their products. WikiLeaks is a part of this T thing. Is the comfort of government hiding all kinds of secrets, and all of a sudden this individual pops up and exposes all these things that have been going on for a long, long time, which some of us, kind of trusted that the government was telling us the truth about things. Also, the greater gap between the rich and the poor is part of this. Now, how do we mitigate this? We mitigate this with good physical health and practice ourselves, keeping our bodies strong, doing things so that we are not a burden on our families or society. Good environmental health. And what's lovely about Ajijic is there's a lot of us that are interested in green issues and the environment and are working to try to make improvements. Pluto in Capricorn is back to basics, sustainability, buying local, buying organic, the organic changes on Wednesdays over at the Hole in the One from 10 to 1. You can get organic produce that's fabulous. So thinking about simplifying life, which I think a lot of us have done compared to our life up north. So we're already ahead of the game here. Now, Saturn in Libra, okay, so here's Pluto and here's Saturn, okay, over here. And then I'm going to talk about Jupiter and Uranus over here. They're opposite each other in the sky. So Saturn in Libra started July 23rd and goes through the 5th of October of 12. Now, Saturn in Libra is in its best position. So this is also a key for all of us in terms of how do we handle this rather buck and bronco kind of energy. And Saturn in Libra has to do with finding balance, working on the principle of balance, finding a place of peace and harmony and equipoise within yourself. If we can do it, just think, if all of us can make it an exercise to try to be as balanced as we can, as we meet each other in the village, a balanced person meets a balanced person, we're not going to have so much psychological, emotional waves going on. So that is a very important key. If there's nothing else you take from today, the key for this year is, how do I find balance? I'm also a Kriya Yoga. I have a yogic background as well. I learned yoga and astrology at the same time 35 years ago now. And in yoga, we talk about the 4 bodies: physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual. So the idea of, can I establish balance with my physical body, emotional, mental, spiritual body? You got it. You got it. Okay. That photograph that's being passed around is an ocean. Who's got that now? Okay. It's an ocean with a life preserver in the middle. And in the life preserver, it's sunny. People are on sailboats. And the waters are perfectly smooth. That's what we're trying to get to, and put more boundaries around all the chaos and the choppiness that's going on around us. Now, how do we best deal with Saturn? Is practice good mental health. Okay, so Libra is a mental sign, an air sign. You've heard the expression, energy follows thought. It's true. If you have negative thinking, it's going to play out in the world around you. You'll come to the dry cleaners and she'll be in a crummy mood. If you support positive thinking, positive thought, it's really interesting how much your world will reflect positive thinkers around you. So watch your thought atmosphere. Take media diets, because media is sensationalized to show us all the crappy things that are going on in the world, not the good things. A friend of mine, it might be somebody here, told me she found such humor with the nightly news. Good evening. And then they proceed to tell you about all the horrible things that have happened. And then the very last thing is some kind of fluff piece, and have a good evening. You know, and so trying to protect ourselves from that. Radiating beautiful thought. Being so in contact with what's positive within you is that you carry that out in the world and you bring beauty to the world. What's not to like about that? Stay away from negative news and negative people. Now, if you are one of those negative people, you, most of all, need to do some kind of balancing trick for yourself, because you spread, it's like Pigpen. You know how Pigpen would carry the lit dust around him? Do better. All right, now, Saturn made the square to Pluto, hard aspect to Pluto, fall of 9 through August 21st of 10. So this part of that T that's going on, this pressurized dynamic, is starting to settle out now, but it was a lot about, the stress of the elections in the United States, the stress of the economy, globalization of actually corpocracies instead of democracies. All that was kind of front and center. Now, the last time that Saturn had a stressful aspect from Pluto, okay, so instead of it being like this, it looked like this, okay, they were opposed. The last time that it was exact was September 11th of 2001. Now, that part of it is starting to ease off now. Great. But what is building is what's called this end of it, which is Uranus square Pluto. And this comes close in the summer and goes through 2012. The last time we had this aspect was the 1760s and 70s, colonial American Revolution against the British oligarchs. A version of that right now is the poor and the rich. The decades after that, there was a new national birth, there was the French Revolution, the Industrial Revolution, which is the root of planetary abuse today. Now, people are frustrated with no action. Multinationals are bigger than nations. Big pharma, financial, healthcare, oil, military, technology, and insurance industries have strangleholds on governments all over the world. It's empire-killing community. Profits that determine policy. Money concentrated in the hands of a few. Well, guess what? Some of us are getting pretty annoyed about that. And there was an original pushback in the 60s, 1960s. Many of us were coming of age at that time. And again, it was two very strong planets. And this is the really birth of counter-revolution. Organic farming, biodiversity, okay, alternative healing, and all that went underground and it's emerging again. Now, the clue about this is the missing leg, which is Cancer. Cancer is your inner life. The key question about this dynamic is who and what nourishes me. Ask yourself that question and guide your life accordingly. This rules family, family traditions, our legacy to our children. The promise that goes through 2018 and is very strong the next 5 months. Uranus is in Aries, Jupiter is in Aries, and this is speeding up of technology, so there's more of it. Just this year, Facebook went from 150 million users to 550 million users. Uranus has to do with the unexpected, revolutionary kinds of discoveries, and being an active participant. I pay attention. There's a wonderful aggregate that is dailygalaxy.com. Really good site. I get a lot of my information from there. It is daily. It's the 5 best stories in astronomy or, great images, etc. And you learn a lot. And one that really caught my eye was in January, there was an announcement of a dark flow at the edge of the observable universe. 100 million stars were rushing toward an obscure part of the universe at 500 miles per second, and they don't know how to imagine what it was or is. Essentially it kind of blows the Big Bang Theory, because what is outside that model? Okay, and Jupiter in Aries starts January 23rd, so upcoming, and goes through June the 4th. Aries is about going forth, initiating new action. If you have kids that are going to start businesses or a new marketing campaign or a new product launch, anything like that, this is a great time to do it, the next 5 months. There's a pileup of planets in Aries. Aries is symbolized as the first sign of the zodiac, so it's about taking the first step. So the 2 planets that are tracking close, Jupiter and Uranus, is the promise part of this. And this is what I call the cosmic Santa Claus aspect. This has been going on all of 2010 and is still going on through June of 2011. And here's a great example. In June of 2010, there were 470 known exoplanets, meaning planets outside of our solar system. The Chandra Observatory sent back its first data on June 15th of 10. And on July 1st of 10, we now know there are 1,170 exoplanets. 520 have been confirmed, but the rest will be confirmed. So our knowledge of exoplanets has tripled. It tripled in just 4 weeks, actually. Okay. That Jupiter-Uranus conjunction is also about instant manifestation, and I have some examples from my own life. I was in Chicago, I'm coming up an escalator, and I said to my friend, I'd love to have a breath mint. We just had garlic. 4 seconds later, we get to the top of the escalator, there's a guy handing out breath mints. Okay. I want you to all pay attention in your life because that idea of instant manifestation is really happening. When you have an intention and a desire, see how fast it gets manifested. The other example is I was at a friend cottage, and I went into the cottage, and she had one of these espresso machines with no directions. And I said out loud to my friend, I hope she has a Mr. Coffee. I opened up the drawer, she had a Mr. Coffee. And the last example of this was when my husband and I wanted to move down here. We've been to Ajijic a lot. We came down March of 9 for 3 weeks saying, if we're meant to be here, let a house open up. At Open Circle, we met 2 different couples. The second couple we met is the house we live in now. We virtually did not have to do any search for the house to drop in our lap, and here we are. So strategies to deal with this pattern is let go of old chronic perspectives, learn how to flow. Those of us that are more adaptable probably are having an easier time of this. Surround yourself with positive, like-minded people. Ask yourself, what is your vision? See it clearly, focus, live it daily, and watch it manifest. As you manifest yours, I'll manifest mine. So this is a group effort we're talking about. And in conclusion, I think one of the also succinct points about this time period was Henry James was asked by his young nephew, what are the most important things in life? He said, oh, there's 3. Be kind, be kind, be kind. Okay. All right. That's the end of what I was going to talk to you about. I have some materials back over there. If you want my business card, I do star parties. I love to teach people about the night sky if you're interested in that. And I've got a class coming up on January 26th, sorry. So if you're interested, all that stuff is over there. And are there any questions that we can address?
We have a question right here.
Uh-huh.
Thank you for your presentation. Could you speak for a few moments about how you understand the influence, not just all the things you told us, the movement of this to that, but how you see the influence from the objects that far away onto us at birth and our daily activities? How do you actually understand the influence and the confluence?
Yeah, in alchemy, there is an expression, as above, so below. So it goes on the premise that we are related to the cosmos, we are related to each other, and that what astrology actually is a study of cycles and patterns that are hidden but knowable. For myself, I've done this for 35 years, and the best way to test astrology is to observe it in your own life. So for me, it's been empirical. Every day, I'm looking at charts. Every day, I'm getting feedback about how spot on and accurate descriptions are about people's life circumstances. And so for me personally, it has proven itself over time in an empirical way. There are some interesting scientific studies that have been done in the 70s. There's more of it being done right now. Because the idea that why aren't we related to this larger world? If we were back in that tribal situation, sitting around a fire, which is mesmerizing and altering in the first place, we would start discovering and look up and all of us would be amazed. We could see the Milky Way, for heaven's sakes. We could see that there were wandering bodies, which were identified a long time ago. And so to answer your question, the best thing that I can say from my own experience is give it a try in your own life. Observe your own chart and what's going on. And is what astrology is suggesting going on happening in your life? And it proves itself pretty quickly.
Thank you very much, Barbara. Very professional. I don't sleep well, and I'm almost glad I don't sleep well. Therefore, I am a big stargazer. I live right on the lake. There's been a star. I didn't see it last night, but 1, 2, 3 nights before at 5:30 in the morning.
Yeah.
That is so different from anything I've ever seen. It's bright, and it has points on it, and I can't help but think maybe it arrived on the night of the 3 Kings.
But what planet do you guess that was?
I don't know.
It's Venus. Venus is rising in the morning sky right now. If you get up like about 5:30, oh my God, she's huge and beautiful. So Venus is the morning star. Jupiter is the evening star. Now, at her current time.
Gentlemen,
Yeah, I'm very curious. I'm sure if we look back at stats for the last 5 years, there's been new medical science that I would say that fewer and fewer babies are born on the weekend because doctors are inducing pregnancy. That could result in a baby being born under a different astrological sign than it would have had it gone full term.
That's correct.
How does that affect astrology?
Well, astrologers believe when you're born, no matter what the circumstances around it, you are born. But you're right about that. There's even more babies starting to be born in the daytime because it's frequent for C-sections to be done during the day rather than during the night. So we're having an askew going on of babies being born with most of their planets on the upper half of the chart. In other words, the visible part, because the sun is up on that part. So there's great discussion going on in the astrology community of the effect of that. So when a mom says to me, I had a C-section, is this a relative birth time? You go with it. What else do you have? Okay, so my feeling is a child is born regardless of the outer circumstances. At the moment they take their first breath, give grandchildren being born, have somebody pay attention with a watch. When the umbilical is cut and that baby takes its first breath, that's the time period you want to pay attention to, because then you get the exact time of that child's birth. And for an astrologer, that's golden to have that.
What do you know about the 2012 planets, which are focusing, I don't know if you believe this, on New York? And there is something, I followed a speech of an Indian who walked up and down Mexico, and he had a lecture going, and I didn't quite understand what it was all about.
What she's talking about is the Mayan calendar and the Mayan prophecy that we hear a lot about, that is supposed to be identified by the winter solstice on 2012, which is just 2 years from now. This is a calendar. Mayan astrology and cosmology is something I pay attention to this because you just can't help but pay attention to it. I have not heard of any connection to New York specifically. What my own feeling is, you hear a lot of, doom and gloom around that date. There will be December 22nd, 2012. But I do think it's interesting that a number of different spiritual traditions are all talking about that date, and the idea that there is the idea of a new paradigm, a new language, a new understanding perhaps taking place right around that time period. It's happening now, but I'm not sure what that date means myself personally.
one year.
Unfortunately, that little girl that died in the shooting in Tucson, she was born on September
11th.
and I thought to myself, oh my God, that's karmic. But now that you've said about the last aspect of Pluto and Saturn, that's really, really something.
So we know she had that in her birth chart, and we know that it's being catalyzed by the planet Pluto right now, which would be the sudden drama and unexpected.
Have one here.
Time for one more question, I think.
I have two sets of twin grandchildren,
Ah,
and they're quite different.
yeah.
How can that be if they're...
Okay, the answer about twins, first of all, there was a wonderful study by the University of Minnesota years ago, 276 sets of twins that were separated at birth. And the amazing coincidences when they got together about their dog was the same name, they married a woman of the same name, you know, stuff like that. But I've seen this too with twins, is sometimes the 4 minutes can make a difference from the birth of one to the other. It can change what's called the rising sign, and that can change the quality of the personality. The other thing to say about that is we all have birth charts, but each one of those planets or universal principles can function on different levels, from a kind of a baser level to a higher level. So both of those grandkids may be living out different parts of their horoscope, even though their horoscope are fairly similar. That's an interesting question. I've seen people ask me that and say, oh, they're completely different. I've also had people say, they're so much alike. Okay, are we done?
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we're done.
The presenter next week will be Todd Stone, and Todd will be speaking about water quality progress and projects in the area. If you would please pick up your coffee cups, stack the chairs by color and style. Thank you for coming, and we'll see you next Sunday.